Hello and welcome to part 4 of this build. I do plan for this to be the last part as I'm rounding third base here. So what we've got up until this point, both sides of the bodywork are done. And you can see from a front angle just how much more built out it is. If you recall, this pretty much went straight back. So got that, got the fins on. I've got some parts to cover the seams here. So what's left? I've drilled some holes for the headlights, which you'll see as the video continues. I've still got to make the windows. I've got some tinting material for that, so I'll be using some leftover action figure packaging and tinting it and then attaching them from the inside here. I've taken the wheels off and the bottom part because it's just about ready for paint. Before I paint it, I'm going to be making some brackets for the air struts. So the conclusion I came to is that if I attach the brackets first and then paint it, and then I insert the air struts, it should be a much cleaner process in terms of like any errant paint or anything like that. So I'm going to glue the brackets on first, and I have to make them out of styrene. So that'll be probably the most tedious part of this build, actually, aside from like gutting this whole thing and cutting out the insides. It's going to be making, probably 20 different little brackets to go in different spots here. But again, that's the details part, and that's what I really love, and that's the kind of thing that's really going to make this thing come together. So once we get this all one color, it's really going to look a lot more finished, so I'm excited for that. I'm going to hit it with a gray primer coat first, and then it'll be the flat black. Once the initial paint is done, there's going to be a lot of other details to add. These struts that were molded in, I'm going to be painting the kind of bronze color to match to what they look like on screen and on the real Tumbler. On the back for the jet engine, I also need to add a bezel around here. So I'm going to use another one of these plastic ramekins. This just had like some marinara sauce that came with some breadsticks. So I'm going to cut this edge piece off and glue it on here just to clean up this edge, because this isn't the cleanest cut from when I used this bottle piece. The actual Tumbler has this kind of gold colored bezel around this part, so that's going to help it be more accurate looking. So once this is actually painted, there are still a bunch of little details to paint as well. Another part, there are these two round things here. I don't know what they are, but like they look cool and they go right here. So what I'm going to do is drill holes through this and then just paint a piece of styrene the bronze color and then put it behind so that it just backs that hole so it looks like there's something inset in there. So I'm really excited to get to all these little details. I'm sure I'll find a few more along the way that I need to add in. I also need to do the kind of strut pieces here for these. There are these kind of like actuators for the spoilers here. So they go from here to there. They're kind of triangular frame pieces. So I need to make those. There are also these little fins that come off of these that are, I don't know what, they look like more little air shocks or something. So I'm going to try to make those as well. So a lot of little bits and pieces to make to really send this thing home. That's going to be the majority of the work ahead of me, but it's going to be fun. I really enjoy coming up with solutions for that kind of stuff. So I'll show clips as I go of how I'm doing this so you all can follow along. And then hopefully by the end, we'll have a really great looking Tumbler. Okay, so this is ready to paint now. I've got all the body work done. I've added a few of the struts, and then these are the mounts for the struts that aren't going to be flat black. These are straight up black, so these will get painted with the body. Fins are on. Got the same attachments and whatnot over here. Down here, we've got all the pieces I've made. So these are the struts for these side flaps here. These are the mounts for the fins, so they're going to go like so, one on each. And then I've also got, I don't know exactly what these are, but the Tumbler has them like this. They're kind of these little, I guess some form of air strut, I'm not sure. But I made these out of pieces of the framing of a model kit for a Mustang that I've just had sitting around forever. And then this is a paper clip. So this part's going to be black, and then the white parts are going to be that kind of golden orange metallic color. So all of this stuff is going to get painted next. And then, oh, I've also got these little struts here. These are going to go on the front like that. I took the wheels off, the front and the back, and then this is that bottom piece from the Mattel Batmobile that I've been using. So these are going to get painted individually, as well as the turbine piece. So I'll be hitting this with a gray primer, and then while that dries, I'm going to be painting all these little pieces, and then I'll go back and hit this with the flat black and really tie everything together. I'm really excited to see this thing in all black. And then from there, it'll be the detailing, adding the windows, adding the painted struts, doing some other little paint details, like some silver bolts on here to approximate how these things would be attached. I've also decided that for these round pieces here, I was initially just going to put a piece of styrene behind it like this, but the holes were getting a little rough around the edges, and I was trying to figure out the best way to approach it, and I realized that if I take one of these dowels and stick it up through here, it actually is the perfect size. So I think what I'll be doing is painting these and then just gluing them in here so that they're not sitting too deep, because I think something flush against the inside of this is too far down. If you look at the actual tumbler, whatever these little circular bits are, they're just barely recessed. I'll glue them right about there. So yeah, we're nearing the finish line here, and it's all the fun little detail stuff. So I'm excited to get this thing painted up and then do more of the detailing, and then hopefully we'll be able to have the reveal soon. Checking in here because I want to show you the progress on the body here. Now all I've done is hit it with a couple coats of primer, and it's not evenly distributed yet, but you can see already just how much this thing is coming together. This is my favorite part of a build, when you know, the black parts, the white parts, the little wood pieces, the you know, it all comes together to coalesce into this like more finished looking piece. And yeah, I love how it looks. It might get a little shaky here, but I'm gonna show you a better vantage point. But yeah, I mean, look how that's coming together. Like, that really is just like one thing right now, as opposed to several disparate pieces. Now there are some gaps in the paneling a little bit that I added, but that's okay. You know, this thing was made of a bunch of different shifting panels. That's why it's got all those air struts on it, because the pieces move independently of each other. So that just kind of gives a more accurate look to it, in my opinion. But also, once it's all black, those shadows are going to blend in a lot more because they're going to be against black paint. And so it won't really look like it has gaps or anything as much. So these are the pieces. And it's so cool to see how, you know, this is like 3 or 4 different things, and now it's all one, essentially. And again, still some white spots. I need to hit it again with some more paint, but yeah, you can see how this thing is really starting to come together. Here we have it, the finished tumbler with the customized Neca Batman Begins in front of it. I'll start with Batman real quick. As you can see, I have repositioned the cape here so that it's under these connector points more accurately. It does still lift the cowl up a bit, but that's just kind of a byproduct of it being such a small scale with a cape under it. I also wired the cape so that it can hold this very Batman Begins specific cape pose that Christian Bale was doing in the film. Also, here's a close-up of Batman with the new eye paint that I did for him. I made him look kind of less beady-eyed, and I gave him a gloss wash over the eyes and the mouth. I also cleaned up the edge of the cowl a little bit because some of the face paint bled off onto the cowl, so I cleaned that up a bit. So let's move him out of the way here and we can take a look at the tumbler. So here it is, and I'm super happy with how this came out. I've always wanted a tumbler that was to scale with my figures, and again, the Soap Studio one is incredible, but it's $500 and I was not about to pay that much. So I think all told I'm in this maybe like 120 bucks. It was 30 for the base tumbler that was the fold out playset, and then I think I paid another 50 for a bat pod just because, you know, like secondary market there, people mark them up a bit. That was for the front wheels. Another 25 or so for the four back wheels, the crawler wheels that I got on Amazon, and the rest was material that I had. The spoilers are made from those styrene sheets, as I mentioned, so is the build out stuff here. Some of these are reused parts from the actual innards of this thing as it came. And then I made all these little pieces out of wood and plastic and paper clips and painted them. Same with the side struts here, which you saw all of that. The windows I didn't show the process for because it was pretty straightforward. I traced them, which you did see in the video, and then I took action figure packaging and cut out the shapes of the windows. Then I used a roll of window tint material that I got on Amazon for like 10 bucks and then just attached them from the inside. I painted these struts here that were molded in. You know, they're not exactly like an accurate cylinder. They sort of are like a half cylinder and then they go straight down. So I just painted the parts that actually make them look like struts. I left these front ones blank because they're just not the right shape and it would just would have looked weird. I built these front brackets out of pieces from that model Mustang that I had. I just looked at what the parts look like on the actual tumbler and then found the closest thing I could to kind of, you know, these are two separate pieces that I glued together and then glued on the end here. I added the lights, as you saw. The lights I got from a company called Evan Designs. They are out of Fort Collins, Colorado. If you go to evandesigns.com, they have a bunch of different options. They're not sponsoring this or anything. This is not a paid endorsement. I just found them online. They make a great, very easy to use product, and their customer service was exemplary. They were super helpful when I had a bunch of basic questions because I've never done any kind of lighting before. Turns out it was very simple. You know, you take the red and the black and you meet them together and, you know, tape them up and then you're pretty much good to go. So the switches for these lights are up underneath this fin and then one kind of over here as well. So I made it so that I could reach under and turn them on and off. And then they're just two AAA battery packs that are glued to the underside of the body here. One thing I want to point out is, if you recall, this thing was two pieces that folded together, right? And you can still see a bit of the seam in the front here. The nature of this piece was that it would have been just too difficult to cut out an accurate strip of the plastic and the tinted sheeting to turn it into a window, so I just left it as is. I thought it was pretty okay. We've got this one here that I just put the tint material over the actual piece like this, and then as you saw earlier, I put styrene here and over this piece and over here. So that really helps unify it, so you can't really tell anymore that it was two pieces because it just looks like one. So here we've got the back. A couple last minute additions were this piece here. This piece I had, I think I literally found this in my backyard, like some random debris that was out there from when we moved here, and I thought I'll use that for something, so I kept it. And I ended up having the perfect use for it. Obviously, it's the exact width of this thing that I needed it to be. The tumbler also has this kind of ring up here with these little support struts. So what I did for the ring was I had the hook of a piece of packaging, like from a pair of socks that like goes on the hanger like that. So I kept it because I thought I'll use this for something. And I was rooting around in my fodder for some kind of a ring type of thing, and I had the perfect thing, so I just cut it so that it would fit, and I glued it on, and then more little pieces of wood dowel to be the support struts for that mount on top of the engine turbine. This piece, it may not be showing up super well, but you can see a little bit of blue here and a little bit of kind of a red color, a little bit of purpley. I painted it to give it a kind of burnt look. You know, when metal is introduced to repeated heat like that, it can get that sort of blue hue, like a discoloration. So I wanted that to be reflected on this. But overall, I think this is a pretty accurate depiction of the rear of the Tumbler, and I'm super happy with how it turned out. Especially finding this bottle piece, because again, I thought this was just going to be kind of impossible to replicate, and I happened to have the right bottle, and I thought about even going to the store and trying to find the perfect thing, but we ended up having it in the house, so I was pretty thrilled about that. Let's take a look at the side here. Now, the one thing about this version of the Tumbler, again, they changed a lot to accommodate the space that it was going to need on the inside for all the playset pieces. So it is a bit different from the actual Tumbler's dimensions in a lot of ways. You know, some of the planing here is different, like these different shifting plates and whatnot. But also on the Tumbler, this angle is much more obtuse. So rather than going kind of like this, it actually comes down a little more sharply. And then the Tumbler itself is actually shorter than this. So it would probably stop about right here, and, you know, have a bit more of like a snub nose look to it, I guess. So this one is a bit longer. I actually like the kind of sleek look that it has. That's just one of the differences that you would see between this and the actual Tumbler or scale models that are based on, you know, the design to a T, like the Hot Toys version or the Soap Studio one. So let's take a look at it again with Batman next to it. And I'm really happy with the scale of this. It may be 10% larger than it should be to scale perfectly with this 7-inch figure, but I would rather have it be a little bit too big than a little bit too small, because again, the Tumbler is a huge vehicle if you think about it. Like it's effectively a tank, and it should be imposing on the road. And so I like the way that it turns out scale wise. It comes to about his shoulder or so, which seems pretty accurate to me. And I just think this guy's going to look really awesome next to it on the shelf. So that concludes this video series. I really want to thank everybody for following along with me, and for the subscriptions and the likes and the comments and the questions. It's really been wonderful. And again, you know, I'm building this channel. It's a newer thing for me, and I'm just having a blast with it. I really enjoy talking with all of you, and you sharing information with me, like what your favorite Batmobile is, etc. So stay tuned. I'm going to be doing more vehicles. I think next up is going to be Kit from Knight Rider. I've also got a DeLorean plan to go with the NECA Back to the Future figures. And then I also have some 3-0 Ninja Turtle figures from the movie that I plan to overhaul to make look more like a version of the Turtles that I want. So a lot of fun stuff coming down the pipeline on the channel. So please be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. You know, share with friends who might be into this kind of stuff. And let's do some fun stuff. So thank you again, and please stay tuned for the trailer for my new book, Retroactive, which is a spy-fi thriller. It's kind of James Bond meets Groundhog Day, where a secret agent is part of like a time travel organization for the US government, gets trapped in a time loop and has to free himself from it in order to stop the bad guys from enacting their nefarious plan. And that's going to do it for this video, and until next time, keep your head on swivel.
you.